Boys are back in town here for a Monday night football game in the Steel City. The Miami Dolphins taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers tonight. That game will get underway at 8:15 Eastern. Tom Vecchio, Donnie right side here, previewing this game coming up tonight. It's a cold one, but not a lot of windy conditions. No precipitation in the forecast here, Tom. How about that?
Yeah, certainly an interesting game. I don't think at face value this matchup jumps off the page to anyone in terms of the teams and just largely how the public views them. Like, Dolphins are kind of mess, but they've been winning. The Steelers have kind of a boring offense, but they are, in the division lead right now. Both teams need to play and win, and that's the most important thing. Like, neither team's going to be metaphorically punting on this. They need to play and win. The Dolphins need some help, but it should give us a good game. I'm not going to say it's great. The 42.5 total thing tells us that, but I think we're in for a good game tonight.
Yeah, we should be in for one. And also, as Tom points out, he's right, because over the next couple of weeks, you're going to see some teams absolutely giving up and handicapping during the week. And I thought this guy was going to play. Right. Both of these teams still in the playoff mix tonight. And Tom is right. The Dolphins have been playing better football. The Pittsburgh Steelers looking to stay in that momentum at home tonight. And always, the cold weather drifts in. So let's get into the game and the handicap tonight as we take a look, Tom, at those weather conditions. 17 degrees at kickoff. By the time this game is over, 15 degrees. No precipitation, so no flurries, no snow, no sleeting moments at that point. The field looks actually pretty good as I was watching pregame, Tom, and winds under 10 miles per hour. We shouldn't have any issues outside of it just being really cold, but the worst case is, right, 17 degrees, 15-mile-an-hour winds, below wind chill, punts, field goals. We should get a pretty clean night out there at Acrisure.
We should. Cold weather does impact offense to an extent, but we're not at that extreme cold level, and it's normally that's coupled with wind, which we actually don't have here tonight. So I think we're in a fine spot. I'm not overly excited. Like, if this game ends with 50 points, I'll be shocked. That's where I'm at. So I think we're in that 35 to 44 kind of range tonight.
Yeah, I look at that total, too, because we're going to get into some of the numbers now, Tom. 43.5 is at the opening number. 42.5 is basically what we're seeing across the board right now. When you just look at, like, explosive plays, probably the most explosive guy in this game is going to be Devon Achane. Certainly, he can go the distance with runs, banged up a little bit last week, but I look at the Pittsburgh offense, and yes, DK Metcalf can get downfield. He finally did it last week. They were finally throwing deep shots, which is something the Pittsburgh Steelers weren't very good at this year. But I don't see a lot of home run plays, Tom, like 4-play drive, 68 yards, and a touchdown. I think it's more methodical tonight, and I do think this game plays into a 24-20. So you say, well, wait a second, that goes over the total. Hear me out on this. In that realm, as Tom said also, I don't think we're getting 31-24 in this game. I think it'll be played into the low 20s tonight, and whoever's not going to turn the football over, probably going to win this game. But the 3.5s are starting to populate back up here. You see one at FanDuel there, 3 with some juice at DraftKings, BetMGM, you get the picture. But we'll call it probably the prevailing line across the board, Tom, looks like it's going to be at 3 at game time.
Right. I would say if this game does go over, it's not like you're going to have this locked up by the end of the third. Like, we're going to be down to the final 5 minutes of the fourth. Like, Donnie, team winning 23-20. We're right at that spread. We're right at the total. Chris Boswell, late field goal, for the Steelers at home, where he's always been so good. It's like, the Dolphins covered if you got the 3.5. But the Steelers won the game. The game sneaks over the total. And then, Tua loses again in the cold weather. Like, the storylines kind of write themselves for this type of game. So I will say, if it does go over, I think you're going to be in for a sweat the whole night. And if it does stay under, I think you're going to be in for a sweat the whole night as well. I will say, if it does stay under, that would be a sooner realized trend rather than the over.
Yeah, like we're going to be right around that number. It might come down to a 20-20 game, kick the field goal, 43 points, you get the over at that point. I don't know if anybody's going to run away from it. But also, taking a look at these two teams coming into the game, like Pittsburgh righted the ship last time out, but also the Miami Dolphins playing some really good football. Now, is the competition fantastic? No, but one of those was they beat the brakes off the Buffalo Bills. So, I mean, it's not one of those teams that's dead in the water. They're playing better football now. And what are they doing, Tom? Giving the football to their best player, playing decent defense, and rolling away with it. Some injury information tonight, as we know. TJ Watt, not going to play in this football game. Got that dry needling, punctures his lung, which is ridiculous. But also, Tom, Harmon is down on that defensive line for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's a wounded team that just a few short weeks ago with starters in the lineup, they got bullied from Buffalo. I'm not saying Buffalo can do the same things here that the Miami Dolphins can, because the Dolphins don't have Josh Allen at quarterback. But there is a pathway that you can run the football in the Steelers, and their big guys are down up front.
You certainly can. This is where, some of my I would say my handicapping starts for this game, or started for this game, is like the Dolphins want to continue to do what they have done over the past few weeks, and that is limiting Tua with the ball, limiting the dropbacks, and putting the ball in the hands of Achane to succeed. That's how their offense is operating best right now.
If we take a look, Tom, let's get to some of the prop bets and have some fun with this. We'll take a look. Aaron Rodgers, that 216.5, Tom, has been going up all day today.
Nice.
I do agree with it because I see like Jaylen Warren under the weather a little bit. I don't know how much that really plays into it. He's going to start. I expect him to be full go tonight, but you never know. But Kenneth Gainwell's a pretty good backup running back. When I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, it does come down to what DK Metcalf can do downfield. We know they have 3 giant tight ends they can throw the football to, but more of a methodical offense here. If I had to go, and I didn't take a quarterback prop for the passing yards, Tom, but I look at Aaron Rodgers, 216.5. I think there's going to be opportunities for him to get that. I would rather take Aaron Rodgers' 216 than Tua Tagovailoa's 196.5. How you feeling about the quarterback props tonight?
I don't mind it with Rodgers. I know he looked, I don't want to say the best he has getting the ball deep downfield to DK last week. And again, to your point, like they haven't been doing that much. So I would certainly side with Rodgers first. Obviously, his hand, non-throwing hand, we're a couple weeks removed from it at this point. It hasn't been, like he's getting used to it, and it just that much more healed. So I would buy into Rodgers. And if you are worried, not you, but the viewer worried about Warren and his health in the backfield, yes, Kenny Gainwell is good, but they got to turn it over to Rodgers. Like they got to show that they're ready for the playoffs, and that means Rodgers generally having a big game.
Yeah, to touchdown props tonight for the quarterbacks, Tom. Aaron Rodgers, just looking at FanDuel, so we have it up on the screen, 1.5 at -102 and Tua Tagovailoa plus 152. Again, in that same touchdown realm, it is a little bit, you get the better juice on Tua, but I would lean towards Aaron Rodgers throwing 2 of those touchdowns as opposed to Tua, just because I think Devon Achane could be one of those special backs that is going to get the football on the goal line, or maybe another running back, which we're going to talk about in just a few moments. Are you looking at any touchdown props from the quarterbacks, Tom? Because I didn't bet the over 1.5 on either side, but again, as I said, I think Aaron Rodgers has a better chance to get that than Tua Tagovailoa.
I have not bet any quarterback props today. I have 2 running back props, 1 from each side. But I would certainly look to Rodgers at -102. What we get from the Steelers offense is, outside of DK really, is kind of spread out. But I would have more faith in that passing offense than I do with Tua. And, Achane should be the guy at the goal line for them or in the red zone. That's who the ball should be going to.
Certainly, Achane can take it to the distance on a screen pass as well. That's where the expectations are. Jalen Waddle actually leads the wide receivers tonight, Tom, 63.5. DK Metcalf, 56.5. And Mike Parsons asking a question there. Waller, 8 anytime touchdown or first touchdown. Pitt, not great for his tight ends. He's 28.5. We know he's been a solid red zone threat when he's healthy this year, Tom.
He really has. And what it comes down to is that, personally, I'm not sold on Malik Washington, who's wide receiver 2 for them.
Yeah.
So just when we look at their wide receiver, at least snap counts from last week, Waddle's playing on 78% of the snaps, Malik Washington at 52, Nick Westbrook-Akine at 34, Cedric Wilson at 20. It's like they don't really have like some consistent guy that they go to. Waller's been back for a couple of weeks. He was only at 37% snap count last week, but I want to see that trend up because even though he wasn't playing on a high volume of snaps earlier this season when he finally came out and really put together some good games, there were targeting when he was on the field. So if his number's low and you get, I don't know what his touchdown odds are off the top of my head for Waller, but like he should be a realistic, he's 260, I think, or 200, excuse me. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I know he's 260, excuse me. Waddle's 200. Waller's 260. That's a very viable option. He could very realistically be the number 2 option in the passing offense.
If we're like Devon Achane, 26.5, it's a cold night there. They're going to be dumping it down quite a bit. Kenneth Gainwell, 23.5. I'm always a big fan of. Jalen Warren, 13.5. I think the running backs have a lot of promise tonight. One of the things that I do like the Miami Dolphins a little bit more than, let's just say, what I've liked them last week. If you're not going to get that heavy pass rush on Tua and he has time to set his feet, he can do some things against that secondary. So if you're looking at some of the pass catchers down the field, I don't necessarily like Waddle because I'm really not one of those guys, Tom, that takes the top man on the board unless it's Justin Jefferson because he keeps getting priced at 60. And if you're taking Jefferson, you're getting burned. But those are the type of guys you give me that extreme discount. I don't know if Waddle's at a 63.5 an extreme discount tonight. DK Metcalf will get his targets here, but I think, Darren Waller makes some sense. Washington, don't really love him there. I like Achane. Again, more of the running backs out of the backfield. Now, this brings up the next thing, Tom, because we're going to get to the touchdown props. The tight ends for the Pittsburgh Steelers. right in a row as you get him. We'll take Calvin Austin out of there. 22.5 for Darnell Washington, Freiermuth 17.5, and Jonnu Smith 10.5. If I had to go with him, and by the way, Darnell Washington did have a concussion, but he's active and playing tonight.
Yep.
I like both of those tight ends, Tom. 22.5 and 17.5, I think makes some sense for the tight ends.
Yeah, I like Freiermuth the most out of this grouping. It's not my favorite receiving prop, but I would go to Freiermuth before I went to either of those guys.
Yeah.
And, frankly, Donnie, this is what we often talk about with, referencing DK's number at 56.
Yep.
Like, if he doesn't go over that, then the Dolphins win the game, I think. Like, I don't think there's a world where DK if he ends with 20 yards, I don't think there's a chance the Steelers win this game.
No.
That's where I would look. I will say the Kenny Gainwell.
Yards and stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the Kenny Gainwell 22 or 23.5. That's one of my favorite props.
Yeah.
Receiving yards for Kenny Gainwell coming out of the backfield.
Yeah, working his way in. And also, if you are getting a little bit of the benefit of the doubt where you need a little bit extra breathers there for Warren, Kenneth Gainwell's going to be able to get in there. One thing that we know about Aaron Rodgers, he'll dump it off to his running backs here, and Gainwell can certainly do some damage. Running back props tonight. It's no surprise Devon Achane. He's actually going a little bit higher today, Tom. 82.5 is his rushing prop. Jaylen Warren, 48.5. Gainwell, 28.5. Aaron Rodgers. And I see a lot of people today right here at that Jalen Wright price at 17.5. Achane goes down like 7 carries for like 80 yards or 90 yards, whatever he had last week.
Yeah.
Wright came right in. Filled up, man. Hey, give me them 20 carries. Give me the 100 yards here. We're not saying he's going to get a ton of work, but you do look at a game tonight, and that script just might be running the football. If you tell me right now I can get three carries out of Warren, I think it has a chance because those Kenneth Gainwell type carries that you get, the 3rd and 9 throwaway plays where you pick up 7 yards, I think he's going to be able to get that 17.5. Don't love it, but I do think it's intriguing.
Right. And, looking back at last week's game log, when you see that Achane only had the 7 carries, he left the game early versus the Jets. We got to understand that. And then Wright came in. He played on 52% of snaps last week, this is. So, yeah, seeing his production from last week in comparison with Achane is obviously a little bit striking, but we have to note that if you told me that the split was actually a little closer to 70-30 or 60-40 because it's a road game, because of the, the colder weather, because the Dolphins just need to win this game to keep their hopes alive. If you give me 4 carries for Wright, I would take that and I'd bet the over every time. If I could be guaranteed 4 carries, I would do that.
Yeah. Take a look at the player rushing attempts, Tom. I know like Devon Achane, that's 17.
Yeah.
What did you get, 16.5?
I have 16.5. I got yesterday in DK was minus 133 to the over.
Yeah. And Jaylen Warren now 12.5. I do think, again, I think Jaylen Warren, we're going to get a full go guy tonight. I don't think it's going to be like, hey, you know what? He's got to sit out on a couple series. I think he's going to be okay. I do think that 12.5 makes some sense. Devon Achane, you don't get any discounts on his longest run, like 17.5. He probably gets it, Tom, because that's what he does. But it's like 17.5, man. You might as well just be betting the alt to 30 at that point.
Right. And I would say alt to 20, alt to 30, whatever it might be. I wouldn't do that. Like I said, Achane over 16.5 rush attempts.
Yeah.
That's what I really do like. Over the past 3 weeks, the Dolphins' pass play percentage has dropped to 40%. That is dead last in the league. They are not allowing the ball or Tua to keep the ball in his hands often or for very long. I think this is a running game for the Dolphins. And, frankly, we've talked about it before, like with McDaniel, like at least they've kind of rallied around him. And the players are still playing and trying, which we can't always say for a team that we thought he was going to be fired a few weeks ago.
Yeah, no, they're rallying around, they're playing, and they're still in the, like, who would have thought that the Kansas City Chiefs would get knocked out of the playoffs before the Miami Dolphins? But that's where we're at right now at this point. Touchdown props here. Love to take a look here. Devon Achane, no surprise, minus 125 price. Actually a little bit higher. So I'm around that 115, 120 price. So FanDuel a little bit higher. Jaylen Warren plus 100, DK Metcalf 165, Kenneth Gainwell. Here's what, like, Tom, I usually like to do the double up, right?
Yeah.
Say myself, if I did it with the Pittsburgh Steelers tonight, I actually would go Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, hoping that one of those guys scores and it's Gainwell, you get the 0.7 in your back pocket. If it's Warren, you get the 100. Maybe both of them do score a touchdown because, Gainwell's pretty good out of the backfield. But if I am doing it from a wide receiver / tight end perspective for the Steelers, Tom, I'm going all 3 tight ends.
Really?
Yes. Like,
okay.
Usually we're talking about 175, 2-to-1s. 4 plus 430, plus 430, plus 480. You need one of those, and it's a really good night. 2 of them, it'll be off the charts. I'm going all 3 tight ends tonight. One gets a touchdown, I cash that ticket.
Right. So what you're describing, for anyone out there that wondering why you're betting all 3, but if your unit size is consistent,
same.
That's what it has to come down to. Like you have to, obviously the math has to work out. This is why we're not talking about it, minus 125 for Achane and plus 200 for Waddle. No, obviously there are different circumstances. But if you put the same unit on these, if one comes through, that covers it for the other bets, and then you're fine. And if two come through, then like you said, it's all green for tonight. That would be great. I wouldn't mind going to just Metcalf and Gainwell. I think that's fine. Or Waddle and Waller. Those are certainly fine. I like Gainwell tonight, so I'd be rolling with that.
Yeah, it's you get such good options. Like Jalen Wright also can be one of those goal line backs that you can plug in. I don't know if I want to go that way. You know what I'm intrigued by too? Let me just slide back here to see if we have any receiving props. Which
they don't. I looked.
Let me see. No, I was actually looking for
Thielen.
Oh, is that where you go? Yeah, I was looking for Adam Thielen earlier there. There's nothing up there. How about anything on like Bet365 or anything?
So I was checking. I was looking last week when he was going to be activated for the first time, because last week he played on 48% of the snaps.
He's in there
in his first game for a team, and we saw all these quotes like, "Oh, learning the playbook, this, that, and the other thing." He played on 48% of the snaps last week. So does that bump over 50?
14.5 for Thielen.
Yeah, that feels right.
1 or 2 targets. You got Mark Valdez-Scantling. Like, you know what's funny, Tom? Yesterday, I gave it a free bet. Was Tutu Atwell to go over 2.5 yards. I'm like, this son of a bitch ain't even going to get any of these. And he comes up with a really nice, like 8 or 9 yard catch from the sideline, which made me laugh. But I was like, you should alt him to 50 because it's like, his average depth of target is basically like, you are a guy that just go deep and we'll chuck it to you. So the 2.5 made some sense at that point. But if you're looking at Valdez-Scantling, 7.5 at 365. Let me see what else we got here.
I will say Thielen's 16.5 on DK.
So it's a little bit of a difference there. Yeah. A little bit of a difference there.
But like Thielen's not going to have 8 targets. He's going to have 3, maybe 4.
What do you have? 1? I assume like the more he gets involved in the offense, the more targets he's going to get at that point. But it's one that you don't want to butt like, hey, Adam Thielen got 1 catch for 4 yards. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Getting pissed about Ricky Pierce.
Yeah, I mean, that was 1 catch for 4 yards last week. So, like, again, he had 1 target. He played on 48% of snaps. If he bumps that to 55 or 60%, can he get 3 targets to get you over 14.5? I think so. I don't love it, but it's there.
8-1. Valdez-Scantling 10-1. Like, those guys probably Aaron Rodgers 19-1. Connor Hayward 20-1. Tua 22-1. Ingold. Like, we're getting way down the list. Good old Scotty Miller, barely even hear his name. He's at a 30-1 tonight. But for me, again, looking from that Steelers perspective, like, I don't know how many, like their correlation, 23 points. So you're factoring like 3 touchdowns for the Steelers and a field goal. Let's call it that. Somebody's got to score tonight. I do think one of the running backs at least gets in, but I am going to say a tight end gets in tonight for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think.
Okay. Yeah, I would certainly look to Pat Freiermuth just because I think he's the best talent that they have. And with Washington, with the concussion, that always worries me just a little bit. So I would go Freiermuth, I would go Gainwell and Metcalf. Not in that order. The Metcalf, Gainwell first.
Let's see. We got some of these team props here tonight, Tom. Passing totals for this game, Tom. 428.5 combined for both of these teams. Passing attempts 63.5. Touchdown passes 2.5, so 3 will get it done, but it's a little juicy at 135. Actually, when I say a little juicy, that's a crazy good number for particularly what you see for 2.5, like minus 190, 2-1s, and they just bump it to 3.5 at that point. Pass completions 41.5. I find that intriguing. By the way, I didn't ask you this question too. Let me just go back here quickly to FanDuel. Go back to the passing props. I wanted your attention on this because not completions, it was passing attempts tonight. 31.5 for Aaron Rodgers, 29.5 for Tua. Like, I do think Aaron Rodgers, Tom, is going to be in the mid-30s tonight. I really do.
So
I think he's throwing tonight. I do.
And honestly, it depends. If you don't think Warren, like I know you think Warren is a good go, but if he's not a good go, that number does seem a little bit light. Right? Like 34 last week. He had 21 versus Buffalo. Obviously, that was,
Buffalo had the football for like 99 minutes in that game, and he was still banged up. So I looked at last week as more of like, Aaron Rodgers is back at this point. 31. I think he does throw mid-30s tonight.
I don't hate that. The Tua number seems way too high.
Yeah, it does.
Right? And I know if they're projected to be trailing.
They're getting beat then. Tua throws 35 times, they're getting beat. So you might as well just bet the Pittsburgh Steelers at that point.
Right, at that point. Because listen, 21, 23, 20, and 21 attempts in the past 4 games. You would need 30. He would need to have 10 more than what he's had in these 3 of these past 4 games, essentially. Rushing
props, then, if we combine both teams, Tom, not bad on this. 1.5 touchdowns on the ground. Minus 125. Look at their combined number, Tom, last week. 5 rushing touchdowns. Now, granted, you played the New York Jets. It's a little bit different. You get that. 53.5 rushing attempts. 217.5 as the rushing prop. If I had to go for all 3 of those, I do like the 217.5 a little bit, but the one thing you don't get, Tom, in this game that you might get with like a Trevor Lawrence, like, hey, I'll bust a 25-yard run.
No
You're not getting
quarterbacks.
any runs out of the quarterback. So that is
No.
strictly running back props there.
At most, would you say what? Like the quarterback rushing line has to be like
5 yards?
5.5 at most. Like
Yeah.
we know that they don't want two to scramble. Yeah. And the only way Rodgers would get some is if he's forced down and gets like 3 yards here, 3 yards there.
Yeah. Look at the individual team rushing too, Tom. Rushing touchdowns for the Dolphins scored 3 times last week. It's minus 210, but they very rarely give you the minus half option, which you can parlay into some other things. Then 125 for the Steelers. Tom, I got to tell you, I like both of these teams to run. I like both of these teams to get a touchdown tonight.
I like that Steelers one. Minus 125. Obviously, the juice that you're getting on it is what it is. But you're accounting for Warren. He's not going to be fully healthy. Do you want to take the shot on Gainwell? It's like, well, you could just go for that. Like, obviously, you're never getting the plus money, but that's fine.
It is what it is tonight. All right, let's give a little recap to the people out here tonight. The Miami Dolphins and the Pittsburgh Steelers tonight, getting those temperatures again in the mid-teens here. Not a lot of wind, no precipitation. 3.5 threes in the marketplace, 42.5 as a total. I like the under in this football game if we're just looking from a total perspective. And also the 3 tight end setup, I make some sense here for me as well. I look at this game script and say, I would hate it if it was freezing cold and it was windy temperatures. I do think we get some scoring, which is good enough for prop bets, but give me the 3 tight ends for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Give me an under here. I think this game really does play down to a 21-17 type game, 23-20, right around that total, but I lean towards the under on that.
Yeah, certainly lean towards the under. I'm on the Dolphins at 3.5. Just jumped in on that, so I do like that. Kenny Gainwell over 22.5 receiving yards for the Steelers. I had this morning with you, Donnie, when we talked about it. This was prior to the Jalen Warren injury situation, or illness situation, I should say. And then I like Achane over 16.5 attempts. He's been so good in the run game, and their run game has been strong. Steelers defense, no TJ Watt. This should be a spot for the Dolphins to continue to operate rationally and try and win the game.
Yep. There we go, man. Headed off into a Monday night football game. And by the way, this week, you got Thursday night football, Saturday football, Sunday football, and Monday football. And also, for the people out there to watch these shows for the NFL, college football playoffs as well. This is a really fun weekend heading into it. But that'll do it for the show tonight. Let's cash in some tickets. And Thursday night football, big time game as well. Good time for the season. So we'll be back for that one. We'll see you guys a little bit later.